Hello and hi there, Piotr Magla here again with the second video about my wire plugin version 0.2.1, and in this part I want to walk you through different settings and attributes that are available to you after invoking wire mesh from curve command. But before I go into do this, let me start with explaining the command itself. So I will go to create menu, wire tools, and I will control shift left mouse button click on this menu item, basically adding it to my shelf. I'll right click it and go to edit, and here you can see wire mesh from curve command that comes with one flag called one node per curve, and this flag is by default set to false. So what this does is, well, let me show you. I will select both of my curves and I'll invoke the command. I'll go to node editor, and here you can see that those two curves are now connected to one wire mesh creator node that outputs its data to, in this example, two mesh nodes. So if I change any attribute, it will affect both of both shapes. But if I change the flag one node per curve to true and move back a few steps, invoke my command again, you can see that now every curve has its own wire mesh creator node that outputs data to one mesh node. So at this point, if I change any attribute, it will only affect one shape. So that's something I want you to remember. If you want such behavior, then set this one node per curve flag to true. By default, is set it to false, and I will leave this that way. And at this point, we can basically move to explaining different attributes that are available to you after invoking the command. And those attributes are basically for wire mesh creator node. So starting from the very top, we have wire profiles. And for version 0.2.1, there are two of those, Polygon and line. And if I switch between those two, you can see the different effect we are getting. Polygon stands for regular polygon, and it comes with some additional options. So we can change the number of sides, starting from a very simple triangle and bumping this value up to, I believe the maximum is 80, which is plenty for, you know, if you want to achieve, if you're going for like tunnels and stuff like that, then, you know, 80 should be enough. And also you can change the type. Default is convex. You can switch this to star, and with star you have also the inner radius attribute available. So, you know, again, different shapes that you can achieve with this. But I will, you know, for now just switch the type to convex and the number of sides to 8, and move down to pattern subsection and turn this checkbox on. And now you can see that basically what this does is duplicated my wire profile and spaced this along a circle, because the default layout is circle. If I change this layout to line, you can see that, you know, they're now spaced along the line. We can change the number of sub profiles. We can change their scale as well as coverage. And coverage is maybe better visible if I switch back the layout to circle. So that's what coverage does. Again, pattern is super useful for parallel cables, pipes. If you want to have a rope shape, then also you will turn on the pattern. But yeah, it's basically the pattern subsection. Below that, we have interpolation, and interpolation is super important because what this does and what it describes, well, if I change the number of steps to 1, you can see that from the start of our curve to the end of our curve, we have, well, 1 step. And if I start increasing this value and, well, basically increase this more and more, you can see that now our wire starts resemble more closely the curve or the shape of our curve that this wire is based on. So, you know, the bigger the value, the smoother, yeah, basically the smoother your wire going to be. But this is basically interpolation in general. you can change the interpolation range to edit point. And now you can see something interesting happened. From this point to this point, we have much more of those wire sections, whereas from this point to the end of our curve, they are spaced, with bigger distance apart from each other. And this is because if I select this curve and go to wireframe, you can see it's a Bezier curve that has 3 anchor points or 3 edit points. One at the beginning, one somewhere in the middle, and one at the end. And this interpolation mode basically will it will ensure putting every wire section on every edit point. So here, here, and here. And when I start, increasing this value, it will put those wire sections in between those edit points. And this interpolation range is super useful when we have a 1-degree curve like this one. So if I going to invoke wire mesh from curve command on this curve, you can see by default it doesn't really respect those sharp angles when it comes to the interpolation range start to end. But if I change this to edit point, now you can see we will start to have those sharp angles. So if I change the number of steps to like 2, you can see what effect we are getting. And if I, at this point I can just grab the curve and start moving those CVs, and it will calculate the shape properly of our wire. And that's super useful. I think this is very hard to achieve by default inside of Maya, but with this plugin, well, it's much more easier to get those sharp, if you want some sharp pipes, now you know how to get those, because again, calculating or just moving those vertices to retain the volume of our wire, by hand, I think it's way harder and takes too much time. And with this interpolation range is just a few seconds away to get such shapes. So again, super useful. And the last interpolation range that is available to you is distance. And this is maybe better visible if you have 2 curves that have significantly different length. And if I invoke the wire mesh from curve command on those 2, by default, with the range start to end, you can see, we have 20 steps for this curve and 20 steps for this curve, which means that the spacing between those wire sections will be significantly different. Here in this one, they will be packed much more closer, where on this one, much more further apart from each other. And, if you want to have more even spacing, then the interpolation range distance is the way to go. It will basically now place those, but it will not be based on steps, but rather on Maya units. So at this point, the distance is 3, which means that every wire section will be spaced apart 3 Maya units away from other wire sections. So if I pull this value down, you will see that they will be packed much more closer. And that basically wraps up the interpolation section. And below that we have transformations, which I think they are pretty much self-explanatory. You can scale the profile, you can rotate the profile, which is maybe better visible if I turn on the pattern. So you can rotate the profile, you can twist the profile. So again, nothing to talk about, I think, pretty self-explanatory. And I'll just reset those a little bit and move to the last section, which is normals. And if you do any poly modeling, then you should be familiar with normals. They basically describe how your polygonal surface will react with light. So if I change the number of size to 4 and rotate this a little bit like so, first option that we have is reverse. So if you want, if you're building tunnels, then you will reverse normals. Basically, they will point inwards when where by default they're pointing outwards out of the wire. We also have the smoothing attribute, and this is well, if I pull this up to be above 90, and this is based on degrees, you can see that now our wires are, well, smoothed out. And if I pull this down below 90, well, they are sharp. Well, they have this very sharp angles. And if I, pull this out even more to 0, now they will be faceted, which will be better visible if I pull this distance value up like so. Now you can see the individual faces that that this wire is built on. So yeah, that's basically the whole the whole walkthrough through these different attributes that wire mesh creator node has. And at this point, I just want to say thank you for watching. I hope you will find this plugin useful. Obviously, you can mix those attributes together, achieving basically very different results, from more abstract to more like real world, like pipes and cables and stuff like that. So yeah, I hope you'll have a lot of fun. I hope this plugin will make your work faster. And with that being said, again, thank you for watching, and well, see you next time.